I guess when you're black, the facts aren't enough. They say people won't like it if you don't got a good beat on it. I beg to differ. I beg to differ. As you know, George Zimmerman was found not guilty by a jury of his peers based on the facts that they were given. So let's go ahead and review the facts real quick, because I believe the facts show a different light. So according to George Zimmerman, he was on his way to Target to get some groceries driving in his car when he noticed a young black teenager wearing a hoodie who looked suspicious. He then decided to pick up his phone and call 911, the non-emergency number, and report what he saw. At that point, he decided to follow Trayvon, and while speaking to the operator, he decided to jump out his car and pursue him on foot or following him on foot to give a better directions. While doing so, he was told that they don't need him to do so. So he turned around and he was then confronted by Trayvon, who asked him if he had a problem. He then replied, "I don't have a problem." And then Trayvon told him, "Well, you got a problem now," and punched him in the face. Then he says that Trayvon jumped on top of him and started hitting him in the face at least 25 times on concrete. And while he was trying to swiggle his way to this grass so his head wouldn't be smashed on the ground 25 times, he said his shirt came up and his gun was showing. And Trayvon was like, "You gonna die tonight." So he reached for his gun while he was all dazed and everything, pulled it out, and shot Trayvon. And then Trayvon fell to the side. During the whole scuffle and everything, he says he was screaming for help. And that's the story according to him. This is a scenario of events the way I believed it happened. Trayvon Martin was on his way back from 7-Eleven, walking while he was on the phone, talking to his friend Rachel. At that same time, George Zimmerman was leaving his house in his car, either running his rounds or on his way to Target, like he said. While he was leaving his house, he saw Trayvon Martin walking in the dark with his hoodie on. He decided to follow him. So Trayvon Martin is walking, and he's in his car, and he decides to follow him. While he's following him, he decides to call the 911 non-emergency number. So he picks up his phone and calls their number. While all of this is going on, Trayvon Martin turns around and notices someone is following him in a car. So as anyone would try to do, he would try to remove himself from the situation and started running. So as he started running, he ran off towards the side, around the path, running closer and closer to his house. At that point in time, George Zimmerman stopped his truck, jumped out, and started running behind Trayvon Martin. While they were running, it clicked to Trayvon that no one was home, and that you would not want to lead someone straight to your house when you do not know what their intentions are. So he stopped running towards his house, knowing that his little brother is in his house. So by him going home, he would also endanger his little brother. So as the two of them are outside, George Zimmerman is told by the 911 operator that they don't need him to follow. So he says, okay. And he is then asked by the operator, where does he want the police to meet him? George Zimmerman decides that he is going to stay outside and be a cop, and be a pretend wannabe cop, a vigilante cop, and not return to the address that he first gave, and not return to his car. He decides that because he has his gun, because his gun is loaded, because the safety isn't on, that if anything happens, he has his protection. So he decides that he wants to go and apprehend Trayvon Martin so that he doesn't get away, as he said on the 911 tape, because they always get away. So somehow, sometime in between, they confront each other. I believe that George Zimmerman tried to restrain Trayvon Martin, and in self-defense, Trayvon Martin may have hit him in the nose, just like anyone would. If someone has been following you in a car, they then follow you on foot, and then there's a confrontation afterwards. The person who was following, who is the aggressor, who is the stalker, cannot plead self-defense. The person who was being followed would be acting in self-defense. And a lot of people are going to say following is not a crime, but harassment is. And when you're following someone in a car, and then you start following them on foot, you are now provoking them and harassing them. So that is what I believe initially happened. So as George Zimmerman tried to restrain Trayvon may have hit him in the nose, just like I stated. George Zimmerman fell to the ground, hit his head, got a little baby scratch on his head, which results from you falling on the ground possibly. And then they end up in a grappling match on the ground. Halfway through the grappling match where they're switching on top of each other, George Zimmerman gets free and draws his gun. Trayvon Martin then starts screaming for help for a good 20 to 40 seconds. Then it clicks to George Zimmerman during that time that he is wrong. And then he remembers the stand your ground law in Florida, which he has been taught. So he decides to take matters into his own hands and pull the trigger. And that is what I believe happened. The evidence is as follows. George Zimmerman wanted to be a cop. He took criminal justice courses in college. He rolled around with cops while they were driving around. And he became a captain of his neighborhood watch, a self-appointed captain. Trayvon Martin was a teenager attending high school. Although during the time of this incident he was suspended from school. But the facts still remain. On that night, Trayvon Martin went to 7-Eleven to get Skittles and an Arizona iced tea, which the 7-Eleven tape corroborates. He was on the phone talking to his friend Rachel, which the telephone records corroborate. He was on his way back home, which the path that he had taken, leading from the 7-Eleven to his house, corroborates. George Zimmerman called 911 and essentially said that he saw a suspicious black teenager, which the 911 call corroborates. He was asked which way the person went. And he decided to get out of his car saying that they always get away, which the story corroborates. He was told to return to his vehicle upon getting out of his car, which the 911 tape corroborates. He decided that he wasn't going to meet at a particular address, and he wasn't going to meet the police at his vehicle, which his own voice and the 911 tape corroborates. He had a loaded gun. The bullet was already in the chamber. The safety was not on, which the gun analysis corroborates. He has a cut on his nose and the back of his head, which the medical individuals who tended to him and the pictures corroborate. Trayvon Martin barely had any scratches or any DNA of George Zimmerman on his body, which the medical examiner corroborates. Trayvon Martin was shot in the chest through the heart, which the medical examiner corroborates. There was screaming as a result of their altercation, which the 911 tape corroborates. When the police arrived on the scene and the medical team, they took Trayvon Martin's DNA, his blood sample, and they tested it. But they did not do the same thing to George Zimmerman, which the police report and the medical examiner's report corroborates. When George Zimmerman left his car, you can hear the door chiming, which only occurs when you leave your key in the ignition, which the 911 tape corroborates. George Zimmerman was 5'8" and 194 pounds at the time of the incident, and Trayvon Martin was 5'11", 158 pounds at the time of the incident, which all the evidence corroborates. Trayvon Martin was an athlete playing football and may have been fit, which his school records corroborate. George Zimmerman was also fit, taking MMA courses, which the MMA trainer and the closest actually corroborate. So now you have George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin outside in the ring, and a confrontation ensues. The pictures show that George Zimmerman was punched in the face, or his nose was broken and he had a cut on the back of his head. It doesn't show that he was punched in the face. Chances are he was punched in the face. But if you look at the pictures, it is clearly visible that his head was not smashed on the ground 25 times. First off, if your head is smashed on the ground 25 times, you wouldn't have like a baby cut on your head. You would not still be conscious enough to reach for a gun. You would not know what's even going on if your head was banged 25 times on concrete on the ground. Then, if someone is on top of you, there is no way that they could be in a ground and pound position and you could actually reach for your gun. There is no physical way that that is even possible. Then there's the screams for help, where George Zimmerman says he was screaming for help. Let's think about that for a second. The first thing is the screams for help stopped instantaneously after the shot was fired, after the gunshot is heard. If someone is on top of you, hitting you, smashing your head or whatever, and you pull out a gun and shoot them, you will still be screaming a little bit after the gunshot is fired, because you would not know if you hit them or what occurred. There will still be some type of loud noise to say that was you screaming for help, to indicate that was you screaming. Second, with the screams for help, if that is you screaming for help while your head is being banged against concrete and you're drowning in your own blood in the rain, your screams for help will not be that clear, that pitch. You will be drowning trying to talk. You will be drowning trying to make some type of noise. It will not be clear, perfect screams for help. No one will be able to audibly hear what you're saying. It will just sound like a moaning if you're drowning on your blood in the rain trying to scream for help. It is not possible to scream while you're drowning. Upon George Zimmerman shooting Trayvon Martin, he said, Trayvon Martin said, you got me. This isn't a movie. If you shoot somebody, they aren't going to scream, you got me. They're going to be screaming in pain. They're going to be screaming for help still, or something else. If they say anything. Then you have to look at the fact that he was shot straight in his chest, in his heart. He wasn't going to say anything necessarily, ah, you got me. That did not occur and it would not have occurred. Then you have the fact that he says he pulled his arms from underneath him and spread them out. That lets you know that when Trayvon was shot, like a normal physical reaction, he grabbed his chest while he was falling to the ground. There was not going to be, ah, you got me going on. Anyways, he said that he spread his arms out. That makes no sense. Why would you even do that? Then you have your people who are going to say George Zimmerman is big and fat and he doesn't have the capability to fight. At the time of the incident, George Zimmerman was fit. He was 5'8", 194 pounds, training, jumping around, doing physical activity. Trayvon Martin was 5'11" and 158 pounds. If you look at me, I'm about his size. I'm about the same size as him, and I'm pretty slim. So to act as if Trayvon Martin is that much bigger or that much more physically fit is a fallacy. George Zimmerman only gained all that weight after the whole situation had occurred. Now he weighs over 300 pounds and he gained the sympathy of everyone who choose to deny the fact that he was 194 pounds prior to the incident. Okay. So in the trial, they try to say that George Zimmerman wasn't an aggressive person. He didn't know how to fight. But let's just look at the facts. The facts state that he has been in fights before. He fought a police officer. Whether or not the charges are thrown out or not, he still have been in fights. He fought a police officer, and most likely he has been in fights before that point in time. Trayvon Martin, yeah, he has been in fights too, so he knows how to fight as well. But let's also look at this. George Zimmerman actually took MMA classes, mixed martial arts classes. You had the trainer come on the stand and say that he didn't learn anything. It is impossible to take 8 months worth of any type of MMA training and not learn a single thing. That is physically impossible from my point of view. There is no way that you aren't going to be able to throw a punch better. There is no way that you aren't going to be able to grapple better. There is no way that your whole fighting technique is not going to improve no matter how slight or how far it is. You are going to have an advantage over the average person. So, while looking at all the evidence, you have people that say that Trayvon Martin pushed race into this situation by saying a creepy ass is following. But if you look at the words in that sentence, it will show you where the racism actually started. If you look at the word creepy and follow, that lets you know where it actually started. The whole situation started when George Zimmerman started following Trayvon Martin. And the reason why he was following him was because he was racially profiling him. Whether or not you want to admit it or not, he racially profiled Trayvon Martin. And that is where the racism was interjected into the whole situation. And you know, whenever a gun is involved, you're gonna have the gun advocates coming out. They're gonna act as if irresponsible behavior with a gun is still acceptable. No one is saying that you shouldn't have a concealed weapon. No one is saying that we're trying to take your guns away. All we want is for people to be responsible with their guns. You don't go out and be a vigilante person running around just shooting off. This isn't the Wild Wild West. We're in a civilized country, or at least that's what we're trying to be. Now, we look at the most crucial aspect to this whole case: self-defense. George Zimmerman was essentially the aggressor in the beginning, and possibly throughout the whole situation. If you're following somebody, you are the aggressor because the person is going this way. They're going away from you and you're coming behind them. They are essentially the prey and you are the predator following them. If that person decides to turn around and defend themselves, they cannot be looked at as the aggressor at that point in time because you were the aggressor following them. Whether or not Trayvon Martin initially started the confrontation or he started a conversation is irrelevant because he was acting in self-defense. Someone is following you in a car and starts following you on foot. You should be allowed to defend yourself against that person. And a lot of people are going to sit here and say that following is not against the law. But I believe harassment is. So by you following somebody in a car and then following somebody on foot, you're essentially harassing the person. You're provoking the person. So at that point in time, they should have a right to defend themselves, whether it's verbally or physically. I'm not saying that deadly force is required in defending yourself at that point in time, but you should be allowed to defend yourself as Trayvon Martin should have been allowed to do. A lot of people are going to ask, where's the facts? When you ask that question, you have to keep in mind that George Zimmerman controlled the entire story. Trayvon Martin, unfortunately, isn't here to tell his side of the story. And after the whole incident occurred, when the Sanford police showed up at the incident, they didn't do a proper investigation. So the facts again, the evidence again, was compromised after the fact. So then, now you have even less facts than what they had before. And if you want to say, where's the facts? Where's the truth? You have to look at the fact that George Zimmerman lied at least 5 times. So his story, you can say, oh, this is feasible, this is possible, this is what occurred based on George Zimmerman's story. But you have to look at the fact that he's a habitual liar. He lied like 4 or 5 times at least, changing his story. And then you have to pay attention to the things he says. It doesn't make logical sense. With this case, there's several big issues. There's an issue of racial profiling. There's the issue of irresponsible gun usage. But the biggest component of this case is the use and the precedence that is now set for self-defense. Some individuals may argue that this is just in Florida. But when cases like this occur, they affect all jurisdictions of law. All cases in which a situation like this could possibly occur will be cited back to the state of Florida versus Zimmerman. This case presumably gives anyone the ability to become a vigilante, to go and hunt down someone, no matter what your race, color, sex, gender, or anything is. And when you turn around to confront them, they shoot you and plead self defense. And as long as you're not around to tell your side of the story, which they can ensure will happen by shooting you, they could possibly walk free and get a verdict of not guilty. And that is the precedence that this case has set. And that is what we have to deal with. So, now everyone is all passionate on Twitter, protesting, doing everything. But we have to take this a step further and take it into action. We have to take it and have the laws revised so that it reflects responsible gun behavior. So that it reflects responsible civil duties. It reflects a humane society in which people aren't feeling like they have to be a vigilante, going out and doing whatever they feel like, going and hunting people like they're deer, like they're bears, like they're cattle, like they're sheep. And now it's up to us to make a difference. It's up to us to obtain justice for Trayvon. So, you can go ahead, sign a petition below, donate money to the cause. Because if you don't decide to make a difference will never come. You have been informed. Now get engaged. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. When you're done, visit the official webpage, www.informandengage.com. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Now that you know what to do, go out and do it.